Saturday morning to you, and welcome to On the Mark with Mark Papa. Along with Mark Papa, I'm Gary Byron. Mark is with a Financial Resources Group out of Glastonbury. You can find them online at www.frplan.com. He's also got his own YouTube channel, so you can either go to YouTube directly or you can link up with it on his website, frplan.com, and you can replay any portion of this show or any of the other previous shows that it goes back to January. Simply type in, once you're in YouTube, type in Mark, that's Mark with a K, P-A-P-P-A, Mark Papa 5207. And I want you to do one thing as well. While I have your attention, write down this phone number. Right, just write it down right now. 860-657-8380. I'll repeat that for you. 860-657-8380. And if you did miss it, I'll repeat it at least a couple of more times before the show is over. Mark, good morning. Great to see you.
Good morning, Gary. How are you?
I tell you, not too shabby. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah.
You got to hang in there. No matter how bad things appear to be, it could always be worse.
Yeah, they always can be. It's always best to take a positive mental attitude and then not let the things you can't control drag you down.
That's it. You have your health. That's the bottom line. You know.
Yeah, you can't buy your health. That's for one thing. Well, maybe one day we can, but then again, if you're a president, you can. But best healthcare going. But yeah, it's been an interesting week, Gary. I think one of the big highlights of the week would be the Consumer Price Index. Came in lower than expected, and that was actually a big surprise to all the people who said that the tariffs and the trade negotiations and prices were going to cause massive inflation, and it's turned out to not be the case so far. That's good news for investors. Bond market reacted very positively to that because lower inflation is good for bond yields. Stocks loved it, and it could be interesting to see what the future holds for the Federal Reserve when they look at those numbers in their next beige book and their next meeting. What they're going to do. I still think they're going to want to wait and see and pause a bit, but this is evidence that the rate hikes that they've put into place are starting to take hold a little bit as well. Housing prices as well. We're seeing housing prices starting to fall in certain parts of the country.
Really?
So, oh yeah.
I don't see the
Fed. Go to Zillow in Florida. There's other reasons, but yeah, certain markets that became big bubbles are starting to soften a bit, and I'm also seeing softening in some of the homeless things that were put on the market in my own town of Glastonbury, where they might have been overpriced, and they're cutting them back a couple, $10,000, $20,000 to move the listing. I
don't see the Fed cutting the rate at all. I'm not saying they shouldn't. They should. Yeah. It almost seems like though Jerome Powell has it in for Trump and doesn't want to help him at all.
I think he wants to help the American people. I don't really think that he wants to play politics with Trump.
I disagree.
I would say the opposite could be in play there, but I honestly think, again, in going back to can Trump afford another war? He got in a war with words with Elon Musk. They're starting to kiss and make up again, and Elon's come to his senses. But I think it's good that, we need to learn to work together. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not very easy, very possible to do. But I also, Gary, one other thing with that said, before we get into talking about Social Security timing, which was the topic of today's show, and some strategies on that, it looked like, you can help me on this because you're involved in this game more than me. Only 10% of the bills that were proposed in the state legislature actually passed. Yeah,
well, you got to keep in mind, Republicans talked a lot of bills up to take time off the clock. When you're in the minority party, the only weapon that you have, because you can't kill bills, you don't have the numbers, but you can filibuster. So that's what we would do, is we work the clock against them, and that means fewer bad bills get passed. So on average, about anywhere between 800 and 1,000 bills on a long session would get proposed.
Yeah.
Now, of those, some die, some don't make it through committee, some passes one chamber and doesn't the other, or they don't even have time to take the other chamber doesn't even have time to take it up. So on average, on a long session, between 300 and 400 bills would actually get called. Next year, because it's every other year, this is the biennium year for the budget. Next year will be a shorter session.
Wow.
I would say probably 250. We
want to get on to my thing is the shorter the better, the less damage, the less damage they can do.
That's right.
And they're, we're starting to see more and more artificial intelligence that we're using it more and more in our businesses. It's showing up more and more in our practice.
Which way of life?
More and more in what even Social Security timing tools that they're using. We're going to talk about today. So why don't we get into? We'll get into the Social Security timing aspect of things. But the less damage, the less time up there they could spend, the less damage they're going to do to all of us.
Completely agree. There was one term really quickly. I didn't propose any bills. I mean, my aide came to me and said, "Representative, you didn't submit any bills. Did you forget? Or did you? I'm like, no, that was done purposely." So Social Security is a big piece of the retirement puzzle for so many people. But figuring out when to take it can be tricky. Some at 62. The general age is 65, although I've been hearing 67 has been really, things have been going more towards 67. People are living longer, even 70. Now, the longer you wait, the more money you'll get. If you take the Social Security earlier, the lower your check will be. So, Mark, how do you help your clients to decide the best time to start their Social Security benefits?
Well, Gary, I would say the big thing is getting to know your client, knowing their mix of assets, knowing what they have for retirement assets, knowing what their health is, knowing their parents' longevity. It's kind of interesting. I sit down with folks and said, well, when do I take my Social Security? And we have a tool for this. It's through our tax equity costs. It's called Social Security Timing Tool, but it's a suite of softwares that we use. It's not a basic calculator at all. It's actually very comprehensive. It wants to know everything. What we're here to do is not tell our clients when they should take it, help them figure out what's going to be best for them. That's everything that we do. We're not a tell, sell, teach, preach. I'm not up on the altar telling you must do this, you must do that. This is best for you. We're here to get to know you as the client. We might have a case, one of my cases where there was like a 5 or 6 year age gap, where the husband's now 68 and the spouse is going to be 63, and she's going to retire soon. And said, she should take her Social Security. So we had to do an analysis of that to say, well, they have a lot of IRA money. So one of the things we could do is say, well, why don't you wait to 70? Because again, you get an 8% compounded interest guarantee from the Social Security to increase your Social Security. And then the way we scheduled this was, well, what she can do is, because he's going to have a much bigger benefit when he passes away, and chances are he's going to, the spouse is going to outlive him. Women live longer, sorry, gentlemen, and they last longer too in nursing homes. That's just a topic for another day. But what we did was we were able to figure out for the client that, have his wife take it when she wants to retire and not wait to 66 because they have other tax problems, other money issues. But then when she passes, when he passes, she can apply for his portion. His portion is going to be bigger than hers. So she'll have a much better survivor's benefit by him delaying to 70 and then just spending some of their own money. Going back to that strategy we talked about earlier, a little bit from an IRA, a little bit from a brokerage account, a little bit from their Roth to help supplement their income to keep their tax bracket low, so that that they don't go into a higher tax bracket. So
outside of those 401ks or pensions and whatnot, just strictly sticking with Social Security, the husband passes before the wife will get his Social Security.
Yeah, typically,
but not both.
Not
right.
both.
No, just the higher one.
No, and in fact, that's actually one of the things. That'll happen is the higher earner the spouse can always apply for the higher earner's portion. Okay, when they pass, so the survivor's benefits typically higher. Another thing, if you were married, I believe it was more than 10 years to somebody who was a higher earner than you, you can apply for your divorced spouse's portion as well, and get a bigger Social Security check for yourself. But let's just keep it to basics where you have somebody, I get a lot of people who are, I hate to say this, but they're more the blue collar types. and they want it right at 62. You know, they're going to grab whatever pension they have, whatever.
It's less money.
And it's less money, but they're like, well, their concept is they're not going to live very long, and they're very tough to convince.
But people are living longer now, though.
Yeah. And I've had people who've waited. I've had people who've not waited. I think people who tend to be more affluent want to wait longer. I would just caution folks to say, well, just because mom and dad lived to 90 doesn't mean you're going to live to 90. It's a good thing genetically, but it's a bad thing you need to evaluate your lifestyle versus their lifestyle. And if your lifestyle was not similar to your mom and dad's, you know, you grew up in the 60s and mom and dad grew up in the 30s and 40s, their lifestyle might have been a little different. But then again, they might have smoked more. They might have drank a little bit differently. You might have done some other things. But, you know, you have to, you know, take a look at what your habits are. But, you know, it's always important. But regardless of who you are, what the matrix is, if you have two people who are both 67, you know, we can help you figure out what is going to be the best path. The whole idea is to give you the most amount of money and, you know, with the least amount of taxes, right? Because people don't understand this part, that, so, you know, up to 85% of your Social Security can be taxed as well. So those are things that we need to also put into the mix.
Health and longevity. I mean, this makes a lot of sense. So if you're likely to live longer, waiting could actually pay off big time. But what about the folks who aren't so sure about their health, or maybe, like I said, they have a spouse to consider? How does that how does that factor in?
Well, you know, usually you might have had the person with the health scare tends to want their Social Security a little bit sooner versus the one that hasn't had the health scare that might say, well, why don't I wait a little longer for mine just in case? So I hate to say it, we try and take the crapshoot out of the decision-making process and help you see in a more, we'll give you 3 scenarios. You know, you could call it good, better, best, but it'll say, okay, just do the standard thing, do it the early way. It'll give you one strategy. Then I can say, well, let's just go conventional. Let's just do what, you know, full retirement age for both of you, see what that happens. And then I can say, well, maybe one of you would take it a little bit earlier and one of you are going to take it a little bit later. So we'll run like 3 or 4 scenarios, and then the client gets to decide what's going to be best for them, because only they know themselves. I can only know a client so well, but I can't determine what they're thinking or what they might be feeling, or, you know, what might be in their health chart. I don't know.
Well,
it's tough.
I tell you what, why don't we circle back on survivor benefit? Because right now I want to kind of dig into protecting spouses. But first, let's talk taxes. Nobody wants to give more to Uncle Sam than they have to, especially in retirement. So then how do you help clients keep taxes low, particularly with strategies like Roth IRA conversions?
Well, this is another consideration. And let me just, before we talk about that, I want to talk about one of my five things that we talk about for every client that comes through. Okay. And one of them was, and I'm going to ask the audience if they've done this, if they're aware, and if anyone has ever applied for the program that'll protect a spouse from losing half of their Social Security, a third to half of their Social Security when their spouse passes away. Because even though you can apply for that bigger benefit, you're still going to get dinged, right? You're still going to have lower income. The other problem, Gary, is now you were married filing jointly. Now you're filing single. So what has to happen is you have to make adjustments, but it has to be done on a planning level. I'm not saying make an adjustment of send more money to the government. And this is what I see a lot of people do. They come to me in my tax office, well, let me send in more money to the government. No. Sit down and plan with me. Let's sit down and come up with a game plan. Not send more money to the government. Let's send more money to you, but let's make sure we can plan for this and understand what's going to happen to you. If you wait too long, at 73, you're going to get RMDs. If you didn't plan for that, then you're going to get your Social Security, then you're going to get your dividends, and you're going to get capital gains in your account. Now you are in deep trouble because remember last episode I talked about the IRMA?
Right.
IRRMA. Now you're going to be permanently stuck with higher Medicare premiums. So not only did you have married filing jointly, you lost a third of the income. Now you're paying more in taxes and you're paying more in Medicare premiums. Does that make any sense, Gary?
Yeah.
Or should it just be come sit down with Mark and let Mark figure this out?
I'd rather just give it to you. I mean, This is what you do.
And I can help them streamline this.
But I understand what you're saying.
This is an action item, but also, the program that will protect a wife from losing half to a third or spouse of their Social Security income is when they pass away. Big deal or little deal?
Right.
Right, big deal, I'd say.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Who wants to lose a half to a third of their Social Security income? So that's exactly one of the things we do. But streamlining that income to get the most income, pay the least amount of taxes, and also have the least chance of running out of money is exactly what we know how to do. And that's how we blend it together. But it's only done with getting to know your client, sitting down, and actually making a plan. Not being a victim, sitting down and making a plan with us.
So, I mean, are you playing chess with the tax code and thinking several moves ahead? I mean, I kind of like that. And now you've recently launched a new tax strategy business, right? I kind of think you're onto something called what is it? The Institute of Untaxable Wealth. I saw. I'm trying to remember. Recently, I just saw a press release, I think, on Yahoo. Tell me a little bit about this new venture and what the Institute is all about.
Well, aside from the many things that we can do for people that, unfortunately, there's a lot of people whose die has been cast already, but we could still make some moves for them. This is for the folks that actually, 60, maybe a small business owner. They could be a high income earner, high W-2 earner. They get paid in stock or RSUs. Mm-hmm. These are people making, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million a year. Or someone who, let's say, has a business that, and they get someone just gives them a sweetheart deal. Let's say someone says, "Hey, I'll give you $10 million for your business," and you weren't ready to sell yet, but that's a good number, and you can retire on that. You do want to give 40% of that back to the government that you've worked your entire life for. Or would you rather have a guy like me sit down with you and figure out how to pay?
It's a no-brainer, Mark. I'm
exactly.
sitting down with you.
So I joined the Institute of Untaxable Wealth to come up with different strategies aside from the tax strategies, but then post-tax, once you do pay those taxes, do we want to create? We don't want to create more tax problems. How to streamline their future income stream, so what the money they're going to be living on after they sell that business is also taxed at the lowest possible rate, the least amount of tax, get the most amount of income, least amount of tax, and lower your chance of running out of money. And we have there's strategies that have been on the books for decades that people are familiar with, aren't familiar with, but are there. There are other tax credits, like look at solar tax credits. One year they're a big thing, and then the next year they don't get passed right away, or they don't get renewed, or But there are tons and tons of tax credits that get put into these big bills that very, very specialized tax lawyers understand, and they may only be around for 3 to 5 years. But guess what? If you hit one of those tax strategies within those 3 to 5 years, you can lower your tax bill and avoid a big capital gain or a big taxable event.
Wow.
Legally, by the way. And these are strategies that have IRS opinion letters. These are strategies backed by tax lawyers and CPAs. These are not fly-by-night tax strategies. These are tax strategies that really smart people put a lot of time and energy into.
Kind of cutting edge, huh?
Yes, absolutely cutting edge, and people just thinking out of the box.
Folks, you're listening to On the Mark, along with Mark Papa. I'm Gary Byron. Write down this phone number, 860-657-8380. Again, 860-657-8380, and online at F as in Frank, rplan.com. I mean, I'm listening to you, Mark, and this is powerful. Untaxable wealth sounds like something that we all want. Speaking of high-profile stuff, I think you were quoted very recently in Barron's magazine, weren't you, about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That was like, God, it was maybe over a month ago.
It's recent to me.
And, it's interesting. A good friend of mine, John Davi, who is the CEO of Astoria Advisors. They're the ones, by the way. Remember I talked about sponsoring the IRC 351 exchange? I'll get into that in a minute. I actually did my first deal this week, and we were able to cut a client that had 33% of their entire net worth in one stock, cut her down to 21%.
Wow.
Really, really helped her out. But yeah, I was quoted in Barron's on Bitcoin. So one of the reporters was looking for advisors that were bullish on Bitcoin. And, ultimately, my feeling on Bitcoin is it still hasn't been fully adopted institutionally, that it's slowly but surely happening. It has limited supply. It's one of those digital currencies that is what they call the bellwether of the digital currency. I own, and I was quoted saying there were two exchange traded funds that I'd preferred that I owned. I don't have the ticker symbols with me. One was Wisdom Tree, the other's Fidelity, which I own personally, and also Ethereum. Was another one that I like. But yeah, I was excited to be quoted in Barron's.
Of course, that's
like
pretty,
the Bible of that's
know.
the Bible of weekend reading, and I've been reading that since the day I went to Wall Street in 1996.
Well, congratulations. Let's get to you had 5 strategies that you use to help clients maximize their Social Security and protect their retirement. I've only got 5 minutes before we got to wrap things up. So if you can take 1 minute per, maybe you can lay them out for us.
Well, again, the strategies that we employ, we want to make sure that it's the best strategy.
Kind of like optimizing Social Security timing. I would think
that's exactly what it is. So I don't want to confuse the two because it's all the same. We want to make sure that we don't violate your IRMA. We want to make sure that ultimately you can't live on Social Security alone. So a lot of people can't realize that they don't want to live on Social Security alone. So we want to make sure that their strategy is customed, it's optimized. We have their details here. So we want to talk about things like tax efficient withdrawals, where to pull our money from, so that, because again, if you pull too much money from one of your accounts, all you're doing is increasing the taxes on that Social Security. Mm-hmm. Remember, I mentioned it's called provisional income. Going back to the late 80s and early 90s, Congress got together. If at first threshold it was 50%, tax up to 50%, then they increased it to 85%. And they haven't indexed that for inflation. So in simple terms, singles $33K, marrieds $34K at the 50% level. It's $43K for single and $44K in the neighborhood. And I don't have the exact number with me, but bottom line is that's where you start paying additional taxes on your Social Security. So depending on what your other income is, we need to look at that other income. We need to know exactly where that's coming from, so that, we've had people come in, Gary, who had a Social Security tax at 0, but they've had other strategies that they've utilized, and they're still living happily ever after. And their Social Security is not taxed. So they come in every year, and there's a 0 tax bill on the table.
Nice.
There's other people with pensions. Well, guess what? You're not getting around the pension. You're happy to have it. So unfortunately, if you have pension and Social Security, you need somebody to help you with tax strategy, because that's just going to jack up your Social Security tax.
That's why you're here.
As high as possible. We can help you, show you ways to fix that. Maybe, again, managing the IRMA is huge. You want to make sure that you don't bring yourself up to a higher amount, and it's 103 for single and 206 for joint filers, because you're going to be paying a lot more for that Medicare. So we want to make sure we avoid that. If you do a Roth conversion, we want to keep you in a certain tax bracket. But again, with the Institute of Untaxable Wealth Tax Strategies as a tax advisor, I can show you a way to actually not only mitigate, in some cases, eliminate the tax on that Roth conversion. So you might say, hey, I have a $200,000 IRA I want to convert. Great. Well, let's figure out what the taxes are going to be. Now let's come up with a strategy to mitigate those taxes. And in certain cases, we have products where the taxes will actually help you pay the taxes for you. Okay. And it gets sheltered inside the Roth IRA, which is kind of cool. So there is a lot of different strategies people need to, that people can entertain for this. But the main thing is knowing how your Social Security interacts with all your other income. And if you don't have a plan for that, and you're just kind of winging it, you're just going towards, you're just sort of winging it, and you have an advisor just sitting on your money, you have an advisor that's not doing these things, you just need to give us a call. 860-657-8380, but also go to our website. And in the next episode next week, Gary, I'll be talking about some of the resources that clients can utilize at no cost or obligation, at least to get their estate plan done and get their financial planning going, so that I could sit down and figure out how to get them, again, to pay the least amount of taxes, get the most income, and lower their chance of running out of money. So doing all that. But I want to talk about one last thing. We could close it out.
You got 2 minutes.
So one of the things I do for anybody who comes in, I ask them, would you like to increase the income from your retirement accounts by 25% or more?
Who wouldn't?
All right. You lower your chance of running out of money, and you don't have to move a single investment. How powerful is that?
Wow.
I'm not asking you to move a single investment. It's just a way to increase your income from your retirement accounts by 25% or more, lower your chance of running out of money without moving a single investment. Now, how many advisors would ever tell a client?
No one.
All right. Okay.
Not that I know of.
How about last time we talked about reducing the tax you pay in your IRA and retirement account by up to 70%? Remember, we talked about that last episode. Mm-hmm. There's a way to do that. So you may not get the full 70% if you're higher income. There may be a way to get that, though. Now, with this new tax strategies I have, reduce the tax you pay on your investment income, and that's the income that comes not from your retirement accounts, but from your brokerage accounts, down to 1% instead of the 15 or 25% others are paying. So those are the things I'd say. And because we talked Social Security today, and I want to show people a way to apply for the program that will protect their spouse from losing a half to a third of their Social Security income at their spouse's death.
Wow. I want to know now. We got to give you a buzz. Well, I'll tell you this. What a teaser. Take 20 seconds and talk about the checklist and how can people obtain a free $100 gift card from you? I only got about 15 seconds.
Okay. Simple terms. Call in, make an appointment, 30-minute goals meeting. Come in. I'll request some documentation. We'll do the review. We'll do the full checklist. You do the full checklist. You walk away with a $100 gift card at no cost or obligation.
No cost, no obligation.
I'll pay you $100 to come here so I can find benefits that you're owed and you weren't even aware of.
This is a win-win situation for anybody.
I would say so. I don't know anyone that's failed from this.
No obligation, got nothing to lose.
No.
Folks, let me tell you how you can take the first step here and meet with Mark. Couple of ways. You can, number one, head on over to his website, www.frplan.com. The name of his business is Financial Resources Group. I mean, they're in Glastonbury, so it's frplan.com. And they've got a YouTube channel. You can just type in Mark Papa, MarkPappa, 5207. You can replay this episode and all previous episodes. Most importantly, write this phone number down and call it. Make that appointment. Get your free $100 gift card. 860-657-8380. Again, 860-657-8380. For Mark Papa, I'm Gary Byron. Thank you so much for listening to On the Mark. Until next Saturday morning, have a good one, buddy.